Oh, is it not working? Was none of that working?
It's muted.
Oh, okay. Apparently I was muted and now I'm not muted. So I'm going to repeat myself a little bit. Sorry about that. So I am Dr. Sarah Letts from Pure Light Family Chiropractic in Bend, Oregon. Thank you so much for joining me tonight. This webinar is on a topic that's near and dear to my heart, and it's on how to help little babies be calm and consoled, soothed and settled from the inside out, truly being their best, reaching their full potential. And we're going to talk about how specifically chiropractic care for babies can help. And this is something that's often a new topic for people if you've never heard of it before. So I'm going to go into a lot about what chiropractic for babies looks like, how it helps, and the science behind it. So we're going to talk about, I think about what I already said that I need to repeat. So for our parents out there who are expecting, who are just really wanting to be prepared for baby coming into the world, and knowing all the options out there and resources, and also for the parents who are in it right now and who are going through it. My husband, Dr. David, and I are parents ourselves, and we know the challenges of newborn life and having a baby, especially if it's your first baby. There's a lot of newness and unknowns. So any type of community support resources that can help are so important. And so this webinar, again, is for those parents out there who want to understand how pediatric chiropractic care can help your baby reach their full potential, especially if they're showing any signs or symptoms of being unsettled or unhappy. So we're going to talk a lot about the mind-body connection and literally through the nervous system and what that all means and how chiropractic affects the nervous system. I just want to start off by some common concerns that if any of these sound familiar, then this webinar is definitely for you. So if your baby is diagnosed with colic, which technically means they cry for a duration of 3 or more hours at a time for 3 or more days in a row. So they're just upset a lot to the point where they're inconsolable, which means they're red-faced, they're breathing heavy, they're so upset. As a parent, you're just in full-blown fight or flight. Oh my goodness, I don't know what to do to help my baby. They're inconsolable, crying for hours a day. Particularly, this can happen more in the later afternoon and evening times. So if that's your baby, definitely continue listening. If they have a distended abdomen, so you notice that their belly just seems bigger than normal, it's a little bit puffy or hard, or they're often grunting or groaning, those are signs that there's something deeper going on. They often have their legs flexed up and their hands tight fists. So if you notice, they're always tight fists. I've even had parents tell me, like, I'm sorry, like when I examine their babies, like, I'm sorry, my baby's hands are smelly. They're just so sweaty all the time because their fists are always clenched. That's not normal. They shouldn't have that amount of stress and tension in their bodies. So those are another sign. So their legs are flexed up all the time. They can't seem to unwind from the birthing fetal position, and their hands are always clenched. Your infant may seek pain relief through frequent feeding for longer periods. So if it seems like, and this is something that your mama intuition, daddy intuition has to follow. If they're always like upset and the only thing that makes them feel better is nursing or having a bottle, and they seem to eat way more than they really need, and it's more for comfort, that's another sign, another concern that you definitely want to tune in to understand more of how chiropractic can help. If they arch their back and pull away from the breast. So this arching their back can be while they're nursing. It can be while they're on the changing table, and they just go into this like arched C shape with their back, and they're really, really tense, like high tone in the muscles. This is not normal either. This is another sign of dural tension, it's called. I'm going to explain that, but really a lot of stress in the system. And if they pull away from the breast, if they seem to be rejecting nursing, that is another red flag. If they have excessive reflux, and it's often projectile. So reflux isn't just spit up. Reflux is like curdled, digested, a little bit like vomity smelling, refluxy throw up, and sometimes it's projectile, which if you've never experienced this, it's quite incredible. It can project forward, and it's a lot of milk that comes back up. So if they have excessive reflux, that's another big red flag. If only short-term relief is gained by them being held or rocked. So most newborns, most babies, holding them is going to comfort them. But if holding and comforting and rocking your baby only provides short-term relief, that's another sign that there's something going on. You may notice that they have an uneven head shape. So when you're looking at their head, it may be flatter on one side in the back or in the side, or you're just looking and one eye is different levels than the other, and their head is just seeming asymmetrical. And maybe they have a tilt and turn to their head, so they're kind of tilted to one side and turned, and you just notice their head is always stuck one way, like no matter what, in the car seat, when they're laying down, when they're on tummy time, they're just stuck in that position. That's called torticollis, and the flattening of the head and changes in the head shape is called plagiocephaly. Those are other signs that there's something deeper going on with imbalances in your baby. So those are just some concerns, common concerns. If any of those sound like your baby, I would definitely continue listening. So before I go into more specifically about how chiropractic can help unwind this stress in your littles, I want to talk about what I mentioned, the brain-body connection, the mind-body connection. So our brains connect to our bodies. These little babies' brains connect to their bodies through the spinal cord that runs down the spine, and these nerve pathways go out to every single cell, tissue, and organ in the body. So these nerves function to control all of the functions of the body. And the functions of a baby's body, a newborn's body, are very simple: feeding, digesting, and sleeping. And when there's stress along the nervous system and they're out of what's called parasympathetic mode or rest and digest mode, they're going to be in fight or flight mode, which is sympathetic mode. So we don't want babies stuck in sympathetic fight or flight mode. If they are, their body and their brain are not focused on feeding properly, digesting properly, or sleeping properly. And when either of those three important functions for a baby to grow and develop as rapidly as they are out of balance, then we come up against all the stress and tension that's building and building in their little bodies. So when you think about the parasympathetic rest and digest mode, like a really good way for you to imagine what this feels like in your body is like Thanksgiving. So on Thanksgiving, you're relaxed, you're hanging out with your family. Hopefully it's relaxing with your family. You just ate a delicious, organic, nourishing, big meal of whatever you like to eat for Thanksgiving: turkey, potatoes, vegetables, gravy, and you are stuffed. You are so filled with gratitude and so nourished, and you just get really sleepy, and it's not the tryptophan on the turkey. You are going into parasympathetics. So parasympathetics is that rest and digest mode. Your body says, whew, time to relax, lay down, maybe watch football, whatever you like to do. Maybe you have the energy to go for a walk to walk it off a little, but your body wants to rest. It's that really sleepy, relaxed feeling. So that's how babies should be most of the time, because most of the time they're filling up their little bellies with milk, and they're digesting it, and they're sleepy, and they're happy. Just think about all babies should feel like how you should feel on Thanksgiving. And when they don't, that means something's not going right. Either they ate the food and it's just not settling well, it hurts, it's not digesting properly. Maybe they couldn't feed properly. Maybe there's something going on that's preventing them from having a good latch, that's stressing them out at the breasts, and they can't turn their head properly, or they can't open their jaw fully to get a good latch. Maybe they have a tongue tie that went undiagnosed, and their rhythm and coordination of their tongue to suckle the milk isn't proper, so it's stressing out their bodies. So there's feeding issues, there's digesting issues, they can't keep the food down, it's refluxy, they become constipated, gassy, distended abdomen. All of those things are uncomfortable. Like, they would be uncomfortable for you, they're uncomfortable for the baby, and every new sensation is such a big deal to these precious little babies. And then there's on my screen. And then there's the sleeping issues. So newborns and babies need to be getting a ton of sleep. So I didn't look up the exact number, I can't remember, but it's like 16 to 17 hours of sleep per day. Like, it's a lot in the beginning of their life. And when they're not able to fully go into that rest mode because they're not digesting properly, because they're not feeding properly, they can't sleep properly, and they're exhausted, and they're growing so quickly, and they just can't get the proper sleep they need. They're restless, they're uncomfortable, they're waking up screaming. It's just really rough all around, and it's this vicious cycle. And then your baby may be diagnosed with colic, which basically most in the more traditional medical world will say your baby will just grow out of it, and to a degree they will adapt and compensate in different ways, but we don't want those compensations to turn into other stressors down the line. So I'm not really a big fan of the they'll grow out of it type of thing with anything. I think it should always be addressed, and the root cause and underlying cause should always be looked for. And then the reflex could also be diagnosed, and you could be given medication to help with the reflux. And I would always, talk to your pediatrician about that. But the research shows that the reflux medications are ineffective. And actually, most pediatricians are recommended by the Academy of Pediatrics not to recommend them. They're more of a placebo thing. It's something, but they can build up with aluminum accumulation in their little bodies, which isn't really great. So we don't want that. So again, not giving advice on the medication here, but just wanted to make sure you're fully informed. And so really, those are the only things. When you go to your pediatrician, they're going to say colic, reflux. They may diagnose with baby with torticollis if they have that tilt and turn, or plagiocephaly, flattening of the head. They may recommend stretches or a helmet for your baby. Those are pretty, invasive things. The chiropractic care that we deliver is much more gentle and very, very effective, especially if it's done early on. And I wanted to say, for all of you guys watching, if you guys have questions, I do have a chat here I just pulled up. So if you comment, I can totally answer. So feel free to interrupt me at any time. So how can we get to the root cause of this sympathetic parasympathetic imbalance in their nervous system? And so I'm going to go more into now how chiropractic can help. So as chiropractors, we assess the skull, the cranium, the head, the neck, and the whole entire spine. And babies oftentimes will have dysfunctions, or what we call subluxations. Things aren't moving properly. They're out of alignment in the cranium area, the neck, and down in the pelvis sacrum area. And so these areas are actually the main areas of the parasympathetic nervous system in the body. So the sympathetics is more the center of the spine. Anatomically is where that part of the nervous system lives. But the cranium, the neck, and the pelvis sacrum area is where the parasympathetic area lives. Very interestingly enough, babies, they need that parasympathetics more than anything for eating, sleeping, pooping. And most often we find the cranium, the neck, pelvis sacrum area are out of balance in these babies. And we measure this with infrared thermography in our office. So we do a scan, very, very gentle, non-invasive, measures temperature along the baby's back, and it tells us where they're storing more heat, more inflammation, more tension. And almost always it's the top of the neck and the lower sacrum area. And so we can see the intensity of this through our scans, and we can also feel the dysfunction with our hands very gently. And by gentle, gentle pressure, it's like if you were to check the ripeness of a tomato, we check the pressure of your baby in these areas, and we hold this pressure and help them unwind what's called dural meningeal tension. You don't really need to fully understand what that means, but it's tension along the spinal cord that builds up through their whole system and is sending a constant signal to their brain that fight or flight, something's wrong, I can't eat, I can't sleep, I can't poop. And it's this vicious cycle. So it still amazes me, after doing this now for 5 years in practice and many years of schooling, it will never cease to amaze me how quickly and beautifully these babies respond. I mean, there will be babies who are crying on my pillow that I adjust them on, and they're crying and they're upset and they're getting red in the face. And then I start adjusting them, just gentle, gentle pressure in these areas, and they just take a big deep breath and they calm down. And it's almost like they look at me and say, thank you. Like, it's so beautiful. And they start to rest more. They go into digest and rest mode. The parents will literally tell me, like, my baby, like I had to wake them up to feed them. They were so exhausted after their first few adjustments. And I'm like, that's normal. I actually tell parents now, if your baby sleeps for 12 to 24 hours, just wake them up. They're fine. They're just healing from the stress that's in their body. And so you may be wondering, why did these babies have stress in their bodies? And just flashback to not so long ago when they came into the world, there's the birth stress. So birth, even the most natural, non-medicalized, non-traumatic birth creates stress in these little bodies. Coming through the birth canal is probably one of the hardest things we'll ever do in our whole life. And I mean, it's hard on mom, but it's hard on baby. Those contractions, that energy, that force going through their body is really traumatic and intense. And before they come through the birth canal, depending on the position they were in, if they were malpositioned in utero, this can create what's called in utero constraint. And if they're malpositioned in utero, then coming out during the birth process is often more stressful. You might see shoulder dystocia. You might see their head is mal-shaped from coming through the birth canal if they were in an odd position. They might have a broken clavicle. There's lots of injuries that can happen just coming through the birth canal. And then you have the medical interventions that come with it. So whether there's medications like Pitocin that create, a stronger than natural contraction force, that contraction force is going through the baby as well. And then you have sometimes necessary interventions of forceful extraction, whether with the birth provider's hands pulling the baby out, or it's not uncommon for us to hear about vacuum deliveries where the doctor has to use literally a vacuum at different levels. I mean, I've heard up to the highest level of suction to get the baby out. So you vacuum them up by their heads. And forceps are still used, not as commonly as the vacuum, but forceps literally get in there and pull the baby out by their head. And when you hold a newborn baby in your hands, you know that the most important thing is to hold their head. And their head and neck is so delicate and so fragile, and you want to make sure it's supported. And so the amount of pressure that they use to pull the baby out, I mean, they got to do what they got to do in life-threatening situations to get the baby out, but there's often underlying injury that goes unnoticed. And it's something that we specialize in, but unless you go to a specialized pediatric chiropractor, you may never hear this. And so then you have C-sections. So C-sections, whether they're scheduled or emergency, they can be forceful on the baby, depending on baby's position, but especially emergency C-sections can be extremely forceful because, again, it's an emergency. Clearly, they need to get the baby out as quickly as possible. And kudos to these docs, these OBs, they can get a baby out in like 3 minutes. Like, that is incredible skill as a doctor and surgeon. So that's amazing. But again, there are consequences to this. There are often injuries underlying to the baby's head, neck, and spine. So I hope that answers your questions. If you're wondering, how does the stress build up on these babies? And so again, we look at their whole system, but specifically the top and bottom of their spine. We gently adjust to unwind the stress. And really, the benefits of acting early and clearing out the stress are huge, not just for, having a calm and consoled, soothed and settled baby, and for your sanity and your sleep and your peace and happiness as a new parent, but also to prevent future developmental issues. So if these issues go unnoticed, not only will you have an unhappy, stressed out baby, but you'll have an unhappy and stressed out kid. These issues can lead to decreased immune function. They can lead to more behavioral issues, temper tantrums. They can lead to all sorts of expressions of disease, ear infections, all sorts of things, you guys. And I can't think of them all off my head. There's so many. But really, we want to prevent the stress in their system from accumulating and building onto other stressors that come down the line as they grow and develop, and limiting their development and their function as a human being. So that's really where our passion lies, is to help your baby thrive. And again, you handing over your precious newborn baby to us at our office to care for and help them thrive is the greatest honor. And we never cease to be so amazed and just joy-filled to take care of your baby. So again, this is our passion. This is our calling. We have advanced training in taking care of newborn babies. It's so gentle, so nurturing. If you have any questions about what that looks like, we're always here to help and answer any questions. We're very thorough in our examination to make sure that we are getting to the root cause of what's going on with your baby. And it's not uncommon for a mother or a father who's going through these times of having a challenged, stressed out little baby to literally come to us and say, "You handed me back a different baby. My baby is so happy. My baby is so calm. I feel like I'm finally getting to know my baby for the first time. I feel like I can finally enjoy being a new parent." Like, these are life-changing experiences. And that's why we do these webinars, because we have these moments and experiences with these parents, and we realize that the parents realize it and we realize it. Like, more people need to know about this. There shouldn't have to be moms and dads and babies out there in their houses, stressed out, isolated, alone with no answers. And that's why I'm here with you tonight. And I hope that this webinar is helpful for you. If you know somebody who this could be helpful for, please share it. It will be on Facebook. It'll be on YouTube. It'll also be up on our website. And again, always here to answer any questions. You can email me directly. My email is my name, Sarah Letts at purelightfamily.com. You can also contact our office to get an appointment scheduled. We can always set up a complimentary discovery consultation just on the phone or in person and see what's going on. We can set up an initial visit to get your baby scanned and see the underlying stress that shows up on that infrared thermal scan, and really talk to you, answer your questions, and be a community, be a resource for you, and truly here for you if you need anything further. I feel like I've covered everything I need to cover. If any of this didn't make sense, again, please reach out, comment on the chat, send me an email, whatever you need. And again, so honored to be in this community with you as a fellow mom, and knowing that you're not alone is so big. So thanks again for joining me tonight, you guys. I hope this was helpful, and we'll talk soon.